Hey guys, it's Ryan from Solo Life Abroad, and I'm back with another one. I just watched an inspiring video on YouTube that asked the question, what is one hard-fought lesson that you've learned that you could share with somebody else? And that's a good question. And for me, it's this, that you can strategize a plan, implement a plan, execute a plan, and succeed in that plan in order to escape your life or escape a reality that you don't really like. For me, the biggest example of that, I just talked about it in a previous video. By the way, there's loud motorbikes out here. I'm going to try to edit it out, but if I can't, I apologize. Um, I'm in, by the way, Bohol in Panglao, Philippines, filming this video. And back up 10 years, the video that I had just filmed that I'm going to share a little bit more on here is that I was deeply in debt. I was engaged in a job that I was thankful to have because I could make good money and there was lots of career potential, but it certainly wasn't my passion. I didn't really want to be doing it. I was doing it out of necessity because my businesses as a self-employed person, they went great for a while and I made some good money for a while, but it didn't ultimately work out and I didn't enjoy doing it. So I went back into IT, working for the man, working for a corporation, for a big bank, doing cybersecurity, and I was upside down, negative net worth, big debt, and I was already in my mid to late 40s and I knew I wanted to retire at some point. I mean, I started working when I was about 15, part-time because I was in high school, but the moment I got out of high school, like literally the next week, I was in boot camp with the Navy and I've been working my hiney off ever since until now that I'm retired. Now I'm working on YouTube. But anyway, my point is I was tired of working and I implemented a plan. I researched the heck out of the FIRE movement of how to get financially independent. And for me, the big piece of that puzzle was getting my expenses down because there is an expression that you sometimes hear in business or in entrepreneurship circles, and it says it's not about how much you make, it's about how much you keep. And I heard that a few times and it never really sunk in. But when it finally sank in and I realized it is all about how much you keep. Because if you can get your living expenses down to some ridiculously small amount and you are okay with living that lifestyle, then your dollars that you save up can go so much further. And if that's sort of true for the rest of your life, meaning it won't take a lot of dollars to finance however many years you have left on earth, you can quit sooner rather than later. I call that the denominator, your living expenses, your monthly nut. If you can take that from $5,000 a month down to 500, well, you only need 1/10 as much money, right? Or if it's $2,500 to start and you can get it down to $500, you only need 1/5 as much money to eventually be able to quit or retire and be your own person again. So once I figured that out and I started running some scenarios and some math, I thought, well, if I get rid of my debt, I had IRS debt, I had child support, I had some just consumer debt. I got passionate about getting rid of all of that debt because the moment you get rid of the debt, you can put so much more money towards investments and savings and retirement and 401ks or Bitcoin or whatever your tool is to get invested and multiply your money. You can't really do that when you have debt. So step one for me was figuring out how much of a trap debt really was. At the same time, I figured out the importance of reducing living expenses, and I did both. I got my living expenses down to absolute rock bottom. For me, it was via building and living in a tiny house for 10 years. I still own the tiny house, and technically, I still live in it because I haven't sold it yet, even though I'm 10,000 miles from it right now. But that's like the hard fought lesson I learned, that if you realize the magic of getting out of debt, if you realize the magic of getting your living expenses down to as close to zero as possible, that radically magnifies or shifts or transforms how much money you need going forward in order to do whatever it is you want to do, whether that's just running your own business or quitting a corporate job or just going full on retired or part-time retired. Doesn't matter. That's up to you. But that is a lesson that took me a long time to learn. I always thought I could just make enough money that it didn't really matter how much I spent. I would make so much more than that, and that savings would just happen organically somehow. Didn't work like that for me. I never made millions of dollars. I never had a year beyond about 160K. Most years significantly less than that. So that's the hard fought lesson I want you to really get. And then I'm going to talk about more. It's not how much you make, it's how much you keep. And if you're not keeping enough of your money, it's because you did not structure. I'm kind of being accusatory there because no one else did it to you. You did not structure your expenses in such a way that allowed you to keep most of the money that you bring home. You can't do anything about taxes or the IRS. You can optimize a little bit, but by and large, that's going to be there. Two things in life you can't avoid, death and taxes, right? But almost everything else, your grocery bill, your electricity bill, how much you spend on rent, what kind of car you drive, all the expenses to keep up your car, insurance, all that stuff is under your control. And if your expenses are high, you're never going to save any money and you may never retire. I know 90% of the people in the United States are caught in that trap because they never figured out the magic of getting their expenses down. And once you've done that, you can then invest much more money into your future, into your savings, into the stock market, into whatever you care to invest in. But you can't do that when your expenses are really high, right? And the universe seems to have a way of recognizing when someone is managing their money properly. And when you start doing that, more money seems to flow. It sounds woo-woo, but it's absolutely true. When I got a handle on my money, when I started budgeting, when I started paying down the debt rapidly, I started getting lump sums and small amounts and found extra money in places I wasn't expecting, and it allowed me to continue to snowball my debt repayment program. I did the debt snowball method where I paid off the smallest debts. I used what I had been putting towards the small debts to the next biggest debt, then the next biggest debt. It's called debt snowball. And if you haven't heard of it before, make sure you research it because it worked perfectly for me. And then when all the debts were done, I invested like a mofo. It's the only way I can say it. I invested like a mofo aggressively for about 6, 7, 8 years. And now I'm financially independent. Not wealthy, not rich, but I can live in most countries in the world to a pretty high standard. So that's my hard fought lesson. If you're anywhere near retirement or retirement is just a pipe dream for you, well, let's put it this way. The further you are from retirement, the more you need to hear this message. And if you're a younger person and you have years left, decades left, it's even more important for you to internalize it sooner. Because if I had learned this in my 20s and my 30s, it wouldn't have taken me into my mid-50s in order to retire. I could have done it in my 40s, but I was just focused on, living a lifestyle and making money, spending money. So I never accumulated any money. But it's not how much you make, it's all about how much you actually keep. All right, that's it. I'm going to stop there. Thanks for watching. I hope this was helpful, and I'll see you in the next video. So long.